What's the worst thing you've ever done when excited? Story 1. When I was 15, I got a quick ad from Snapchat to a girl my age from California asking if I wanted to hook up. This was Thanksgiving night, and she was visiting in Washington to see her family. This girl never sent me a snap of what she looked like, only a photo of her in the mirror from her camera roll. She was pretty but looked fake. It was snowing that night and super cold, but I was desperate and young. So I put on like 6 layers and grabbed my bike out of the garage after everyone had left. My uncle caught me and told me not to leave, but I didn't care. I was horny, and as I said before, I was desperate. He said if I left I wouldn't be allowed back inside, but I left anyways. It was a 12-mile bike ride in about 3 or 4 inches of snow. As I got about a mile and my uncle told me he called the cops. In Washington there is a curfew for people under the age of 17. I finally got about 4 miles away from the address she had sent, and she was still actively texting me, but the way she texted me was interesting and weird. She was saying things like, "I hope the experience you have with me will be that of a lifetime," and other things like, "Do you feel the rush of lust in the air?" I knew these things were weird, but I didn't care. It had been about 2 hours by now, and I was only a mile away. My phone was dying, and I stopped at a gas station that was closed and waited for a car to show up so I could ask for their charger. The car that stopped was rusted and the windows were taped, but I asked anyways. They invited me in their car. It was a younger couple, probably early to mid-20s. Looking back at it, they were probably on drugs. They asked how old I was and what I was doing out so late. I think I told them I was coming back from Thanksgiving at a friend's house. They began making out, and the woman started giving him head while I was in the car, and it made me very uncomfortable, so I left. I got on my bike and rode for another 10 minutes in the pitch black in the heart of the Pacific Northwest with high wind and snow. She hadn't responded for a bit, so I began to think she bailed. I texted her again when I got to the address. The address of the place was outside on the street of these very nice houses with a bunch of trees around them right on the water. I told her I was there, and she said I would have to wait for about 20 minutes before she could come out. I sat down and fell asleep. I woke up to a woman whistling and stood up and saw a woman walking towards me. As she got closer, I realized this was not the woman I had seen in a picture. The woman in the picture was a 15-year-old light-skinned woman with an afro. The woman that I saw in front of me was in her 20s and was still light-skinned but had a weave. I didn't even question it at that moment. I had already came too far to care. I thought we were going to go inside, but she told me we couldn't go inside because her family was still awake. She and I walked down this dark path for over a mile because she had a beach house by the water. We didn't say a word the entire time. We got to the so-called beach house, and it was an abandoned, run-down, what to call it, so let's just call it a shed. We went in, and she pulled up on the floorboard and grabbed 3 blankets and laid them on the ground. At this point my post-nut clarity had settled in before I had even done anything, and I realized I was either catfished by a lonely woman or about to die. She tried to kiss me, but I asked her if we could play truth or dare instead. She agreed. My plan was to pry as much information from this woman as I could and then decide if it was worth it. I asked her the most basic but alarming question right off the bat. I asked how old she was. She told me she was 24. She then said that she knew she lied but didn't want to scare me away and thought I was really handsome. She told me that she had 3 kids with 3 different men and was a stripper in San Francisco. She was a recovering heroin user. She said that she liked sleeping with younger boys because it reminded her of when she was younger with older men. Now I admit, this woman had lied to me about everything, was a drug addict, a stripper, but I didn't care. She was hot, had huge tits and a face meant for a facial. My next time asking her truth or dare, she chose dare, and I won't go into what I asked her, but let's just say an hour late and many nicknames along the lines of my baby boy, young man, and child, my trip became worth it. It was great, and I could tell this woman had more experience than anyone I knew of any age. We were done, and that was that. She said I could sleep there till the morning, but she had to go back inside, and that's it. She put on her clothes and left with my cum still on her face. I slept till the morning and got home. My uncle wasn't there, so I went to my room. I went to text her, but she had blocked me immediately after she left. Story 3. Helped a hot coworker stalk her supervisor. I'm in my early 20s working a small warehouse job for the summer in my hometown. I've got the awkward hots for this older woman Tina, none of these names are real, who just seems so much out of my league that I don't even try. One day we've got a bit of banter going, and before I realize what I've done I ask if she wants to hang out. She asks if I have a car. I do. She says yes. So we're hanging out at her place. She's telling me stories that are like holy shit, and the beers are going fast. Then she gets a bit of a lost look in her eyes, goes quiet, and then asks if we can go for a ride. We're out driving around. She's telling me how she used to go driving every night but got a DWI hanging over her for another few months. Then she starts giving me direction on where to go. A bit later we're in a cul-de-sac and she tells me to park and points out a spot. Cool, we're gonna make out, I think. Instead she just sits there staring at this one house. Looking in the front window I see Bill, again, not his real name, our supervisor. Holy shit, what is going on here? She tells me that her and much older Bill used to have a thing, but he refused to leave his wife and kids. Then he has totally ghosted her because he thinks she's too obsessive, but she can't stop thinking about him. I hear red alert go off in my head and I get the car started. She turns to me, looks me straight in the eyes, and start undoing my pants. I turn the car off. For the next half hour we just sit there silently staring straight ahead at Bill's place while she gives me a slow handjob, eventually finishing me off with a blowjob and me driving her home. So we ended up doing this for the rest of the summer. Never had sex, her pants never came off, never kissed. September came and I left town for my next semester at uni. Story 4. Had a buddy who was a nymphomaniac. He was with a different girl every 3 days, like it was nuts. This dude jerked off 3 times a day on top of whatever pussy he was getting. So one week he was going on vacation and couldn't find any girl in the area he could fuck for the week. He got so desperate he even went to a beach near his vacation spot to try and find some pussy. Needless to say, he comes home, and we don't hear from him for like 3 to 4 months. It gets to the point where we were worried about him, and hadn't seen any new pictures or videos of him with the girls he hooks up with. We went to his house unannounced and saw a car parked in the driveway. We figured it was a girl. We all had spare keys to his house, so naturally, we just went into his house and started calling for his name. We come to find clothes all over the house, and there's music blaring in the basement. We go down and we cannot believe our eyes, our buddy, on the couch getting Eiffel Towered by 2 dudes. He was mortified. We all ran out because we didn't know how to react. About 3 days later he messages us and asks us to his house for dinner. We all go, and when we get there, the same car from when we walked in on him getting Eiffel Towered is there. We go in, they're all at the table, and he explains, he went to the beach on his vacation and the only people there were these 2 dudes, and they were all there for the same reason, to find a hot girl to fuck. After nothing they all agreed to just do each other out of pure desire to come. They enjoyed the experience so much that they stayed in touch and were doing it multiple times a week in between pussy appointments. To this day, the 3 guys all ended up finding women, and they are all married and have groups orgies with their wives. Story 5. Dude I kinda knew comes up to me at a bar at closing time, 3 a.m., and asks if I want to fuck his girlfriend. She's there next to him giving me sex eyes. She asks another dude with me and he's down too, but backs out soon cause he's in a relationship. We all stay walking toward her BF's apartment, a few blocks away. Stop in a little church garden alcove and take turns eating her pussy while she sits on a bench. We walk to his place where he's got a bare mattress lying in the living room floor and his roommate is playing video games nearby. He starts fucking her but I can't, having major whiskey dick. He also has a huge dick, which is kind of embarrassing to me. While she blows me, I look down and there are bedbugs lined all up and down our legs chowing down. I've dealt with them before, so I'm not super put off and instead throw my clothes into the freezer to kill any that may have got on them. Eventually they do bother me though, and I say we should go to her place instead. Grab my clothes, we hop in the car and I finger her the whole way. Her place is a very messy trailer with Fisher-Price kids' toys strewn about. We get in her bed and I try again to put a condom on, but I just can't get hard. Guy goes to the bathroom. Meanwhile, I'm fumbling with a condom, feeling embarrassed about both the whiskey dick and how small it'd be compared to that dude's wang anyway. Never got to come, and certainly didn't deliver any penile pleasure unless she really enjoyed slurping my limp noodle. Walked home in the dawn shortly after, feeling physically terrible and mentally disturbed. Story 6. When I was 15, I was just starting to enjoy masturbation. My parents went out, brother was at band practice, and I was home alone. So, of course, I went to work. I googled my sex documentary, that one where they stick a camera on the vagina. I'm sure most of us have seen it, because back then I thought only men watched porn. I took my shorts off, and this time around, because I was all alone, I decided to go wild, and I also took off my panties. I placed the corner of the pillow in my clit and humped away. After what I thought was a delightful orgasm, I sat there content with myself, thinking about how mature I was for knowing masturbation wasn't a sin and for allowing myself to explore my body in a healthy way. I felt like I was superior because I was being responsible by masturbating instead of having a boyfriend like other girls, so responsible that I got pregnant at 18. My happiness only lasted a few minutes because, as soon as I got up to clean myself, I realized that I had forgotten the fact that I was on my period. Girls out there would know that period blood plus vaginal juices equals mess. The whole corner of my pillow was stained with fresh blood, and part of my bedsheets were too. I panicked. I had no idea what to do, so I decided to wash it by hand in our bathroom sink. The plain old hand soap wasn't working, so I tackled it with shampoo, and I even added some conditioner for good measure. For some reason, I thought that if I placed it in the washing machine, my mom would know. So the sink was my only option. The stains never fully came off, and from that day on, I made sure to always change the pillowcase myself to hide my mistake. That night, I slept on a cold, wet pillow. Years passed, and the stain remained there to remind me of my actions. The worst part of it is that a few years later, my brother actually used that same pillow for some time. Story 7. I live in a state with pretty harsh winters. I was at a buddy's house partying during the holidays and we got hit with pretty good storm that closed the roads. My buddy's place was in a canyon where the snowfall was even greater, making leaving that much more impossible. I was dating a girl at the time who was a bit of a freak. She was not with me at the party, she was hanging out with a friend who was visiting from out of state, but they were going to come to the party after they were done doing their thing. Well, they got to talking and decided that we should have a threesome. I'm notified of this development via text message, and am instantly both ecstatic and mortified. I'm stuck. They can't get to me. And they are on their way to my house. I explained the situation to my buddy, and he did the only thing a bro could do in that moment. He helped me cut apart his mom's wicker chair that had belonged to her grandmother so we could try to make snowshoes. They worked for about 50 feet. Well, of course I made it. I was either going to make it or die trying. It was a lot harder than I was prepared for it to be, but so worth it. To this day I'm a bit of a legend in that circle of friends that has since expanded. They applauded and cheered as I set off on my trek. As I recall, they sent me off with a half a pint of wild turkey, a sleeve of Ritz crackers, and a bag of beef jerky to keep my energy up for not only the journey, but the deed.